Let me now do a final summary of what I brought back from Nevada. I'm going to comment a little bit more on this lovely thing, which is secondary flake and tertiary flake. So 0, 0, let's say 5, 3. So is this 0, 0, 5, 3. I'm going to comment on a few other things here and there, and then I'll try to summarize. First of all, I want to take a longer look at these these three items really here, and just make some comments about them. They're obviously flaked stone tools. They may have a big chunk of primary flake on them that's not worked much. They have polish down here. They have damaged edge all along here. So each of these three items has the same sort of idea, which I'm not trying to quantify with flake proportions here, but the idea is that you've got this part of it and you've got that part of it, and the working edge goes all the way around there, all the way around there, all the way around there. So you start thinking, okay, now how would that be used or deployed or whatever? If that's going to be hitting the material, then this is either going to be in somebody's hand or it's got to be in the handle of some kind. And I can tell you, you do not want to be holding onto those sharp edges. And so you wonder, why did they leave them there if they're not going to be working edges? I come to the conclusion that this was jammed down into the handle, probably held in place by pressure. And all three of these things have the same basic feel. And look at this one now, this magnificent piece. It's all, you might call that a primary flake, or you might call them secondary flakes. It's all secondary flaking, the whole thing. So it's 0, 0, 8, 0. And you might push a little bit of that over to 0, 1, 7, 0, instead of 0, 0, 8, 0. You can push some of it from secondary over into primary. But these are uniquely shaped. I call them short-stemmed axes. This is just a little tiny one. Sharp around here, not used, not damaged. Damaged around there, perhaps a little bit of tertiary flaking maybe. Essentially all secondary flake. So these are an intermediate type of flake proportion. I want to make a couple of specific comments about these things. I was noticing earlier this X pattern that you see on those two guys. Remember that we compared these two things, and there is no X pattern on this. This is a different way of thinking about how to break off the major pieces. And then I find of some interest that that X pattern appears on these smaller things. This is a Great Basin crescent whose date of 8,000 to 9,000 years ago is understood and known. So I think that you can make some comparisons between those and give the known date for that. Could associate that to things like this. Remember, this one's a little bit older because it doesn't have edge work. And this one is the same flake proportions as these two, so I put it into the same category as that. This is also something with a worked and sharpened and damaged edge along the upper curve. And all of this is sharp, unused. So almost all secondary flaking. So, but this has additional edge details that those may be lacking a little bit. And unlike the short stem here, this has got a longer stem, which sort of matches the sense that this is all stem here. So, different kinds of axes, and I'm going to say different style of flaking. Let's remember these bladelets. This was a 0800, and this is a 0710, no, 0701. It's like you were doing a smart flaking off the core, and then you started just doing a little bit of additional detailing. So the tertiary flakes came in after the primary flakes, but before the secondary flakes. consensus that that's a little bit older than that. And that these are perhaps, who knows. There's a bunch of stuff I don't know what the heck this is. You can look at the flake proportions and try to assign them to one of the groups that you've got here. This group. I regard this as having the same kind of flake proportions, except for the convenient bits of cortex on there. It's pretty much the same as that. And so you have a spectrum of these things. Before I go away from the specifics, let me just comment that this really didn't get flaked by someone who had a lot of strength, and I try to put my hand around it, it's way too small, and I just get a feeling of sadness when I look at that. Person didn't have, they just had to pick up a piece of scrap that other people had discarded maybe, used it for some kind of a braiding, maybe similar in use to that and these others, but there's this. Someone wasn't being taken care of by other people. Someone small on their own. Anyway, so finally, let's look at what we have in terms of a summary of these different things. So, I'm going to start off very quickly with the bare rock. This has got all of its surface untouched by flakes. You've got an old one pebble chopper and you start taking a few flakes off of it, so you get some primary flakes, or maybe you call them secondary flakes. They're about a quarter of the overall size of the thing, the overall dimension, pushing closer to half. So I think actually this is the correct thing to write down. You see a pattern here of crudeness replaced by some additional detailing. The old bladelet, my favorite, was a 080. Everything's primary flake. The other bladelets, those guys, had a little bit of secondary flaking on them. Where'd it go? I didn't, yeah, a little bit of secondary. No, this is a mistake. It's just like that. Sorry. Where's my pen? Fix this one. The stabber, that funny stemmed point, it's got a little bit more stuff moved away from the primary flaking. The short stemmed axes there, they've got some cortex on them or primary flake, and then all the weight's on the secondary flake. The long stemmed axis, that guy is in the same pattern as those, which I think was 1331. Then you've got these sort of salutrium type things, which are secondary and tertiary flakes alone. This is in that style, but with some advantageous use of cortex and primary flaking. These are little things, I don't know what to make of them. They're arrowhead-like. Or these are called gravers. I'm going to have to go. This is getting too late. But what you see is that the oldest stone tool is just a rock. And the sharpest, neatest, most modernistic looking thing, the crescent, is all the weights on primary flakes, really. There ain't even any secondary flakes to be seen here. It's all small flakes, probably because of the size of the piece is similarly with that. So you have a spectrum where the weight seems to sort of move from here and diffuse outward. And sometimes they go from crudeness to a little bit of sharpening, and then the sort of intermediate shaping concept might have come along a little bit later. It's all very, very interesting. And if you were out in the desert, you wouldn't be spending time at home looking at these things. You'd be looking at the ground and having a great time